My name is Svetlana Suchkova, and I direct the Academic Writing Center. Punctuation. I'm inviting you to a tour. It's really a tour, though I decided to change the title a little bit. Why punctuation? First of all, it's the most abused and misused problem because some teachers think that it's not necessary to teach punctuation, and very rarely it is taught in the university. It's different from the Russian language, and there is a huge variety in the usage because there are lots of language variants, there are lots of styles, and there are some tendencies here. Just to give you an example, now there is a tendency to avoid full stops or periods after the initials of the names. And it is, of course, connected with the publishing business. Plus to that, the rules become more and more permissive with the amount of textees. We do text a lot in social media, in WhatsApp, in other applications. And that's why it's very important to teach it. Speaking about the rules, I'm often asked a question like, can you learn all the rules and apply them? Unfortunately not, because punctuation in English is governed by the rule only in 2/3. And the matter of personal style and taste is really very important. And you probably know, for example, a poet, American poet, E.E. Cummings, who was the master of punctuation, and his style was completely based on the original usage of punctuation. What we are going to do today. First of all, I would like to say that I'm going to speak about American usage of punctuation, though I'll give some side comments about British punctuation as well. But what you will have in your handout, you have a whole list of resources, and some of them are about the differences between Russian punctuation and British punctuation. Some compare British variant and American variant, and there are lots of rules and reference materials and even self-tests if you just are interested in that. Okay, so a little bit of history. Who is to blame? Who invented punctuation? Nobody knows, but still some people say that Greeks are to blame, and they invented one punctuation mark, which is a period, and period in American English, a full stop in British English. And they used it to mark speeches, public speeches. It was used for oratory purposes, for rhetorical purposes. And it happened some like 2,000 years ago. In Middle Ages, it was formed as a system, and two brothers whose names were Manatsui were considered just fathers of European punctuation, and it happened somewhere in the 15th century because they came up with a certain set of rules, and there were 8 punctuation marks by that time. But until the 18th century, all punctuation marks were related to oral speech, and they served to mark the pauses. It was important for oral speech. And I give you an example of a book which was published in the 18th century, and it was called Literature and Language. And that's the quote from that. The comma represents the shortest pause. The semicolon, the pause double that of the comma, and the colon double that of the semicolon, and the period double that of the colon. You see, that's why personal taste and personal style in English punctuation matter a lot. Why did I call it punctuation marks actually as traffic signals? Because there are really some signs that help the reader go smoothly along the road of your text. And they serve as indicators when to slow down, for example, when to notice something, or when to take the detour, or when to stop. And the cleanest metaphor for punctuation is a full stop or a period, which is really red light on the road where you have to stop at the end of the sentence, right? Comma shows like speed bump, where you make a pause, you breathe. And that's really very important because you give some air to the reader and you focus where to stop. And that's important just to remember about that. There's one rule which is taught to American school children, for example, how to measure those pauses, because the pauses can be of different lengths. And they say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippis, 3 Mississippis. While they say 1 Mississippi, it takes the length of a comma. When they say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippis, it marks the end of the sentence. But if they use it 3 times, repeated 3 times, it shows the indented line or a paragraph. That's probably an important just thing and funny thing to remember when you talk. Okay, so that was just a little bit of history, but what is the purpose? The purpose is that it contributes to the plainness of the meaning. So they make the text easy to comprehend. Because if we use a lot of punctuation marks in the text, it disrupts the flow. But if we use too little of punctuation, we create chaos. So to make sure that your text is understood very well, we have to master punctuation marks. Okay, but they should be invisible. Okay, so it's important to say that today we're going to play, because I promised fun, right? And we're going to play with 3 things. One of the concepts is ambiguity, because if we do not punctuate the text correctly, then the meaning will be ambiguous. We're going to talk about the meaning of some of the punctuation marks, and we're going to focus on problems and the rules ultimately. In those problems, I have chosen looking at the problems which Russian speakers or writers experience in their writing. So the majority of the time will be focused on commas, because this is one of my favorite marks, okay? Then we'll talk a little bit about double marks, capitals, and quotes, okay? How we're going to work today, okay? I'm going to apply this approach. First, I'm going to plunge you into the water and hope you will not sink, but you will just swim, okay? Why is that? Why don't I start with the rules? Because proofreading is a solitary activity. You have to be on your own with your text. You need just silent time, you need focus and concentration. And so this is a kind of diagnostic thing, because after that, you will know what is the most challenging of punctuation marks to you, okay? Then we'll proceed to the discussion. And of course, I will give you just answers, and we will make all wrongs right, or we may come to the conclusion that both variants are fine, or maybe more than one version, maybe more than 2 options even, okay? And then we'll talk a little bit about the strategies, how to master the presentation, okay? So we are going to start with quizzes, and when you see that just symbol, take a quiz, that means that you're working on your own, that you're working with the handout. Okay, what we are going to do, we are going to exercise 1, and I'm going to give you 5 to 7 minutes to punctuate the text. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Hey, let's stop here. I see very serious faces. That's great. I bet that you have lots of doubts, but now we're not going to check that. But no worries, we'll get to that at the very end. And we will see how many changes you'll make after the workshop. Okay, let us start doing the exercises. And the first thing is, what do you see? Could you please just write in the chat? I bet that you know the picture. It looks familiar because it exists for lots of decades. I see lady, woman, but could you specify what an elegant lady? All right. I see that a young woman, an old, okay, let both. Okay, fantastic. Why did I give you this picture? Because this is an optical illusion, right? And all the optical illusions are based on ambiguity because we do not know what the author meant. Probably he meant that you will just see whatever you want to see, but ambiguity as a concept is really very important for punctuation. And if we go further, we'll play a little bit with that. In your handout, you have one sentence, okay? Could you please punctuate it? Definitely, it reminds you what? It reminds you казнить нельзя помиловать, right? Like in Russian. And why I just focus your attention on ambiguity. If we don't punctuate the text, we don't know what the author means. And for the reader, it's very difficult to understand what's that. Okay. And of course, all punctuation marks, like in Russian, they have certain meanings. And I have prepared just two examples for you from literary works. But I think it's just fascinating. And when we can see that this na, and this is an exclamation. Exclamation mark in English has the same idea as emphasis, but we should be very careful about using an exclamation mark in English because it's called a shout mark. That means if you put a lot of exclamation marks in the English text, it looks like you are yelling at the person. You are hysterical. That's why when you write dear somebody, do not use an exclamation mark like we get used to in English, okay, in Russian. All right. There are lots of memes on the internet, if you see. Have a look at this picture. Would you like to go to that restaurant? Menu, food and drink, welcome to a clean Western restaurant. What's wrong with that? There are no comma after menu, but do you really need a comma here? Probably you need menu and then a colon, right? Because what to expect in the menu. But most of all, what makes it fun is the usage of quotation marks, because quotation marks have a meaning in English that something is used in a different way. That means it's not clean, but it's actually dirty. That's what they mean. And probably people won't go to that restaurant because it's not clean at all. Okay. And restaurant is capitalized for some reason. Okay. If you look at this, we spoke about pauses, but what's important here is stress. Is this a squirrel eating pumpkin or a squirrel eating pumpkin? You see? And the whole difference is a hyphen here, okay? It changes the complete meaning because the meaning of a hyphen is to combine two words into one unit, okay? Let us play with the meaning now. Can I refer you to your handout? It's exercise 2, and I'll give you about just 2-3 minutes to punctuate the text. You see that it's a letter. 1, 2, 3, go. Let us have a look at one version, which is definitely a love letter. See, this is the letter. Maybe yes, they just meet, not broke up. There is a hate letter. That's not my invention, actually. And this letter came from a famous book written by Lynn Truss. I highly recommend it. I will show the title of it later on. And that I used it as a demonstration. Can we use no punctuation mark at all? Yes, we can. Though in the text, at least capitalization and end marks will be there, like exclamation mark, question mark, or a period, right? But again, we should be absolutely careful whether it is ambiguous or not, because you see, the change of punctuation marks can lead to the change of meaning. Okay, let us talk a little bit about style. And can I refer you to exercise 2? Okay, and you are supposed to put the information blocks in the reference, because you see it's a journal reference, right? And I gave you what's what. You have name, you have family name. Could you please put the information blocks in some order? That's exactly the trick I wanted to play. Of course, I'm very well aware that sometimes you can use just some apps that can generate the references if you just put a tick what kind of reference and what style you would like to have them. But still, you should be clearly aware that there are 250 styles exist. Can you imagine this? Okay. And devil is really in the detail. Okay. If we look, for example, in Chicago style and compare Chicago style MLA, that's Modern Language Association, and APA, you will see striking differences. And I've marked them as red ones, you see? The differences can come with full first name or only abbreviation, with capitalization, how the volumes are put, how the pages are given, okay? And this is just an indication that you should be very careful. And usually in the guidelines for the journals, of your target journals, I mean, it's clearly indicated what style they expect, okay? And it's better from the very beginning to stick to that particular style. Once I talked to editors and asked the question, what makes you crazy? And one of the editors said, it makes me crazy that people are so inaccurate in writing references. And it shows that they may be not that precise in their results as well, okay? So the message here is that there are lots of different options, and we have just to know what to use. American Psychological Association, they usually dictate rules for social sciences, for behavioral sciences. MLA is used for arts and humanities. Chicago usually for history. Okay, but you probably know that because we did lots of workshops on doing this. Okay, and now let's come to problems, as I promised. And as I already announced, comma is my favorite. I hope that it's your favorite as well, okay? Lots of memes. If you are interested, you can just Google a meme on punctuation and you will find lots of them. All right. Does it look familiar? Where have I taken it? This is Metro, okay. But why have I put it on the screen? What's wrong with that? I think it's wrong because you see that the last fragment of this sentence is passengers with children and pregnant women, okay? Not separately, but it is one unit. Okay, that's true. How about this? Cooking, her family, and I would say, and her dog. List of 3. In American punctuation, it is recommended to put a comma in front of and as well, if the list of 3 things. How about this one? That's fantastic. If some of the texts include directions, like it's a direction or instruction, okay, be careful about just commas. That was just for fun, but we are starting talking about this. And Oxford comma, sometimes it is recommended, sometimes it is recommended to avoid it. But my recommendation is to be on the safe side, put an Oxford comma because it adds to clarity, first of all. On the other hand, when people are going to copy, give the final proofs in the text, it's very easy to delete it if the journal doesn't support Oxford comma. Okay, we'll go further. Can we use no punctuation? And this is an example of a typical problem, which is called run-on. When we have no punctuation at all, but the sentence runs and runs and runs and runs, you see, and it creates a chaos because the reader does not know where to stop. And of course, it's a basis for fun and different puns. And it reminds us of the Russian way, okay? Подъезжая, у него слетела шляпа. Okay, so that's that. More examples on the pictures. If we look at this sign, I just didn't know that the squirrels can drive at all, you see, okay? It should be punctuated somehow. It's a run-on, okay? Or I didn't know that the state of Missouri is a severely handicapped state, okay? Again, this is a road sign, but it needs to be punctuated, okay? So now we're going to play with run-ons as a problem, okay? And now I'm inviting you to your exercise 3, and there are sentences there you have to punctuate. Go and do it. Have you got this kind wrong? Why wrong? Because this is a problem which is called comma splice, okay? You see that every, this sentence, big one, I mean long one, consists of 2 sentences, okay? Comma splice means when you use in a complex sentence, you use a comma. It's wrong because there is a rule we're going to talk about. What to do if you have a very, very long sentence. By the way, speaking about long sentences, whenever I talk to writers, I always highlight that a sentence that is well read should be no longer than 20 words. If you have your sentence more than 3 lines in word format, then there's something wrong with your sentence and it should be edited, okay? But what to do if you have a long sentence, compound or complex? We're going to differentiate them in a minute, okay? What are the strategies? The first strategy is to break the long sentence into 2. It's easier to read and it's simple, okay? Coming back to our example about King Charles I, okay? King Charles I prayed, and then half an hour later, okay, this is where we put a period. Another strategy is to use semicolon. Semicolon is called the most elegant of punctuation marks, but you shouldn't overdo this, not more than just two in a sentence, because semicolon has a meaning that it connects two parts of the sentence. They're closely connected. But speaking in terms of metaphorical traffic signs, it shows that it's going to be a diversion from the main thing. You see here, King Charles, I prayed in the semicolon between the two sentences. All right. Still another strategy is to use a comma and a connector. Okay. In this case, I put and. All right. Or if you want to make it a subordinator or two sentences where one depends on the other, you use semicolon and a subordinator. The favorite subordinator for Russian writers is however, okay? But if you use it within the complex sentences, you should put a semicolon, then however, then a comma afterwards, okay? So these are the strategies for run-on. And you have one more sentence, which is more complicated. And my question is, how many sentences here within one? Okay, two, really. But how do we count sentences? Let's see what you have. I hope you have some version, and I'm going to give you just several, and then we'll discuss what's what. Okay. Who has this kind of sentence with a connector and another connector? And how many sentences makes it? Employees' morale, this is the first subject, right? Has a big impact, has an impact, it's a predicate. Job satisfaction plays, okay, second sentence, and managers should value. So all in all, there are three sentences. But it depends on us as writers, what we want to say. If all these sentences have equal value, we can make them complex, and then we need coordination, right? But if we need some kind of subordination when one sentence depends on the other, then we have to use a subordinator. And remember, before the subordinator, we have to use what? A colon, right? And then we have just again three sentences, but a different version. These are possible versions of how to do that. The most important message here, when we do proofread our text, and when we see a very long sentence, first of all, we have to ask ourselves the question, how many sentences are there within one? And what can we do as writers to make it easier for the reader to follow our train of thought? Okay, okay. Could you please go to exercise 4 and try to punctuate these sentences? Okay, let's see. It is a complex sentence, right? Okay. The first strategy is to use a period. Okay, we'll learn this. Or to write a semicolon to show that they really just very close. Okay, we can use and, all right? And we can break into sentences and put if I had time at the very beginning, all right? And put a comma here, all right? But again, what I would like to draw your attention to is the place where we have a subordinate sentence, a subordinate clause. If we start with the subordinate clause, like in the last example, if I had time, then the comma is required. If we start with the main sentence with just, we do not use a comma. And that's a tricky thing. Let us relate it to the writing. You know that in research articles, writers or researchers are usually required to write about limitations of their study, right? And there's a trick about just balancing the limitations and the contribution. They say if you start the sentence with although, and then you give the limitation, you put a comma and make the first part really short, but your contribution is a longer part, okay? And that gives a better image, but that's a trick for writers, all right? We'll go further and we look at the compound sentences, you see? While I was writing an article, I start with the subordinate clause. That's why a comma here, right? But if I change places, there is no comma. The same is with because, but I tell you a story. Once I taught an IB class at school, and then I got a letter from a student of mine who entered a Canadian university, and he wrote, Svetlana, you taught us not to use a comma in front of because, but I have to unlearn that and use a comma in front of because in my university, okay? The only thing he missed is that, first of all, sometimes British writers write a comma in front of because, but there's also a trick. One option where, one case when we use a comma in front of because, when the main sentence has a negative to show that this is the cause why something didn't happen. But this is a tiny just side remark. Whenever you see because, probably you will remember this. Okay, we go further. And can I refer you to handout and exercise 5? And here we have a mix of different usages of comma. All right, I'll give you just about like 5 minutes to think carefully. Okay, let us take just sentences one by one, all right? In the first sentence, okay, we have to ask a question, how many people were invited? Okay, if you look at the first version where I have 2 commas after Cuban and after victim, okay, how many people were invited? See how different it is from the second one. 1 comma is missing, this one. And then we say who he was, right? He was a victim and he was an abuse survivor. Both variants are correct. The only thing here is that we need to know how many people. If we look at the first sentence here, the first option, and we have 2 commas, that means that 2 commas identify or modify the noun which comes before. We understand that Mark Cuban was a 9/11 victim. That was one person. And then we have and we have and domestic abuse survivor. So if we delete that part with 2 commas, we will have invited Mark Cuban and domestic abuse survivor. That makes it 2 people, all right? But if we have only 1 comma, then the whole part after the comma modify Mark Cuban. And we understand that there was only 1 person who was invited, but who was both a victim and abuse survivor. All right, good. Okay, we go to the next sentence. And again, we ask a question. What is assessed and by who? Okay. Again, both versions, both options are possible, but the question is, what is assessed and by who? In conducting annual self-assessment, training providers should seek help. There is ambiguous here, but definitely training providers, okay, and they do that annually, but we do not, okay, self-assessment, yes. And how about the second one? Are not specified, some providers, we do not know who, okay, that's that. Okay, just a very slightly different thing, a very slightly different focus, but still it exists, and it depends entirely on the comma. Okay, let's go further. The question is, what do we do? Are they all verbs or nouns? Or some nouns and some verbs, okay? And here in the first version, in the first option, we have merchandise as a noun, right? In the second, all of them are verbs, that's true. Okay, let's go further. The question is, that's my favorite actually. When and how many? These are the questions. Having time machine, that's true. And we go further, okay? Cannibals or cooking fans. See, it's a kind of long bit at the very beginning, before the comma. All those out there that look like to cook and eat, what's that? What does it serve in the sentence? It's addressee. That these are the people whom we address, okay? That's that. Quite a long thing, but still, all right. That's true. Okay. I love this one. 2 options are different. And both are possible, that's true. But where is accusation? Where is support? So in the second, we are together. We both detest liars, right? And I accuse the person of being a liar in the first option. The title of the book, which I really love and recommend if you would like to enjoy reading about punctuation, it's called Panda Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. Okay. And here the question is, where is the killer and where is that cute animal? And you see that in the first, shoots is a noun, right? Shoot, right? Having a rifle, for example. And in the second, it's a noun, okay? You see, it's they are homonyms here. All right, you're absolutely fantastic. You had fun. And now we're coming to double comma, exercise 6, please. And I'm going to give you just several minutes for that. 1, 2, 3, go. as I promised some strategies, we have to ask ourselves a question. Now, is the information which we put within double commas important, or is it an additional type of information? Have a look at this one. Is it additional or important? And how are we supposed to check? We take that bit within commas, cross it out, and see whether the meaning changes or not. And here we can say that without that bit, which started in China, the sentence has the same meaning. That's why this part is should be given in commas, because it gives additional information, but not quite necessary. Okay, but I have noticed that Russian writers, first of all, they mix that and which in the sentences, and later we're going to talk about this. And sometimes they use which with comma, sometimes without comma, but incorrectly. And that's what we are going to focus on gradually. That's why I focus your attention on that. Have a look at the second one. Again, it's a comma in front of which. Can I attract your attention? It's a kind of side comment. Do you see the quotation marks here and the place of a comma? This is American version. And in American punctuation, we should remember that all commas go to the left of quotation marks. In British, it's going to be vice versa. First, we close the quotes, and then we'll add the punctuation mark. But again, if we delete which appeared in the Sunday newspaper, nothing will change. I mean, the meaning will be the same. The product is on sale, right? But let us have a look at other sentences. And this sentence is about students. And you see that there is no comma here, because if there is a comma in front of who, for example, and after mind, then it changes the meaning absolutely, because not all students tend to write clearly. No, only those who always write with the reader in mind, and that's important. And we are coming to restrictive, non-restrictive sentences. Sometimes they are called classifying, non-classifying. It doesn't matter what to label them. But the idea here is there is no punctuation mark, because this information is not additional, but important. The same idea in this sentence 4. We cannot cross out, okay? Otherwise, it alters the meaning completely, okay? And this is the difference between restrictive, non-restrictive clauses. My question is to you, were all the kids happy? If yes, in which of the two versions? The kids who got ice cream were very happy, and the kids who got ice cream were very happy. Only those who got ice cream were happy. All the rest were unhappy. This is one of the most complicated issues, restrictive, non-restrictive clauses. And the definite article demonstrates that both the reader or the listener and the writer or the speaker know about what kids we are talking. And for example, if you look at the playground and you see definite kids, certain kids, and you can say the kids were happy playing there, okay? Of course, out of context, nothing works, but still this is the difference between the meaning implied by the commas here. I would like just to comment here. In restrictive clauses, which give important information, they use that and no comma, all right? If it is non-restrictive, providing additional information, they use which and the comma. But the things get more complicated if you use British variant, because they use which in both cases, in both restrictive and non-restrictive, and the only indication how important that information is comma. And sometimes when we edit texts when somebody wrote, research texts, it's not clear for us whether the information provided in the sentence starting with that or which is really important, necessary here, or is it additional? And only the writer knows how important the information is. That's why I try to focus on this very complicated issue. Let us have a look at double marks. We played a little bit with double commas. And now, could you please decide what other double marks you can use? And my hint to you is in one of the sentences, there are dashes. In another sentence, there are parentheses, okay? In one of the three sentences, there are double commas, okay? Which is which? All right, I hope that you have this. For some reason, Russian writers love dashes, but the recommendation is not to use dashes because they do not add to clarity. They have different meanings, and one of the meanings is emphasis. When you really want to emphasize something, and by the way, dashes show that you have to slow down because you provide a very important information, which you would like to draw the reader's or listener's attention. Okay, and what we can remember is about just dashes, parentheses, and commas, that commas are quiet. Okay, like this: mountain lakes. And the meaning is, by the way, my hometown is a quiet, picturesque place in the north, right? Whether the dashes, they kind of shout, they scream, okay? And parentheses, they provide unnecessary information, all right? And they are very, very quiet, they whisper. So parentheses, whisper, get rid of them. I'm going to speak a little bit about parentheses for Russian learners. Quiet, it's commas. Shout, it's dashes. For some reason, Russians love also parentheses, but the difference between Russian meaning of parentheses and American meaning of parentheses is that in Russian, sometimes we clarify the information and provide very important information, especially if there are some numbers and we need explanations of them. But in English, here in American version, usually this is extra information which is unimportant and can be easily deleted. That's why whenever you would like to use either a dash or a parenthesis, could you please just think about the meaning and the effect they produce? All right. And now we come very quickly. I will rush you through several more things, quotes, italics, or neither. All right. Let's see how much we know about these things. Okay. Could you please go to the next exercise and decide whether to use italics and whether to use and where to use quotes? Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Let us have a look at the first one. So football crazy is an episode, right? and series is called extra. First of all, have a look. You may have noticed that in British variant, they use scare quotes, single ones, all right? In Americans, they use double quotes, okay? This is the difference between the two variants. Okay, I'm not going to give you the rule because you are going to deduce the rule after I present the correct version, okay? Just have a look at the second one. We have Atlantic Monthly, it's magazine, right? And it's given in italics. Plus to that, can I attract your attention to the, and it's capitalized because it's part of the name. That's why it's capitalized. All right. And you have an article, which is given in quotes. Can you deduce the rule? What's the rule? What's the difference between italics and quotes? The rule the only exception here is the religious books. They are big, but they are not italicized. If this is a long short trick, you should remember that if we are talking about something big or long works, okay, you use italics, okay? If you use some parts of very short works, then you use quotes. Title of an article versus journal. But speaking about journals and books, whether they're capitalized or not, again, could you please check the style, because the styles differ here. So here we should remember just big, small trick. Okay. How about quotation marks? Could you please just go there and see what you have? So the meaning of quote, somebody else is speaking. And the question is, who is speaking, right? Okay. We can say that. The student said the teacher is crazy, okay? Or we can say the student said the teacher is crazy, all right? Have a look at the place. Again, in American English, we have it to the left. See, this is a period which comes to the left. And all of them are double quotes because this is American, right? Okay. If we look at this sentence, of course, it's a kind of punctuation parties, but sometimes we do have some inclusions within the sentence. And here we have a poem, which is short, right? It's called The Raven, okay? That's why it should be, both words should be capitalized because it's one entity. When we have quotes within quotes, so the rules are, we start with double quotes, then we give inclusion in single quotes, but when editors and proofreaders complain when they see quotation marks, that very many writers open the quotation and forget to finish it, okay? And that's why why we had so many. Could you please raise your hands who has at least 3 quotation marks at the very end? We need here 5. Why 5? Let us see. So we started. So the indirect speech starts with the word Sue. So Bob said, what did he say? He said, Sue said, okay. And then a quote within the quote. My favorite poem, you see, double marks, then inclusion with single mark, and then we have double marks for The Raven as short. So all in all, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, you see? And plus to that, we have in American, we have to the left, the end marks to the left, but in British, vice versa, after the marks, okay? Capitalization rules, okay. Not only just exclamation marks yell, but all caps yell as well. And whenever you write a Facebook or some post in social media, do not overdo that. Do not use very many capitalized caps. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Could you please just underline those letters that should be capitalized and go to the next exercise? I don't think it's very difficult because the rules are quite similar to those which we have in Russian. Let us have a look what we have. Great Depression, both words are capitalized because that's an event, right? Have a look. New York City, the city of New York, and New York State. New York City, that's one name, and that's why all the words should be capitalized, which is different from the city of New York, right? Because here we have a shortened name of that. Festivals, yes. Now there's a tendency in texties, write I, Russian, English, American with lowercase letters. Don't do that, okay? I would probably focus your attention on two things, like director lowercase, but professor capitalized, because this is a title and this is the profession. This is the difference, okay? One more thing which is complicated kind of for us, it's number 10, have a look. History, small letter, and algebra 101, capital letter. Why? Because history is just a discipline, but algebra 101 is what the discipline is called in the curriculum. Okay, that's the name of the course, and that's why it's capitalized. All right. All the rest are kind of familiar to us. You can always do that at home. The only thing here was just a play to again remind you that styles are different. And whenever we write a title of our article or whatever you are writing, okay, we first should check the style of the target journal. But there are general rules. And you see here, like, okay, for titles, usually we use all the words like capitals if they are content words, and if they are the last word in the title or the first word after the colon, which I already mentioned, all right? But all the rest should can be different. What we should remember is we should capitalize all principal words. Generally, this rule works. Okay, but again, check the style. What principal words? Nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, all right? These are principal words. But we do not capitalize usually articles, but we see the Atlantic Monthly, and it was capitalized. The article was capitalized because that was part of the name, right? And prepositions. In some styles, it is recommended to capitalize prepositions if they are more than 4 letters or more than 5 letters, for example, through or before, right? Unless they are the last word. If they are the last word, it's capitalized, okay? And check the style. And see, check the style, check the style. 250 styles are there. This is just a reminder. All right, now you have learned something and we're coming to final tasks. Okay, this is the final task, and then we go back to our first text. Okay, I'm going to give you about just 3 minutes for doing this, applying all the strategies we have been talking about. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, probably the most difficult thing was to find the end of the sentences. But can you imagine, while you're finishing, there was a PhD candidate in architecture. His name was Patrick Stewart, and he defended his dissertation. It was 140 something pages without a single punctuation mark. Can you imagine? It was, the whole dissertation was a run-on. Okay, now have a look. Probably you have the same. I would like to draw your attention to certain things. For example, Scopus used to be written in italics because it's big, but not anymore, okay, because it has been around for a while here. Let me attract your attention to the keywords which are given in quotes. And in the original, it was mobile learning and foreign language learning, and the whole phrase was given there because they are looked at together. The dependence of mobile learning on foreign language learning, you see? But if these are two different things, two different key concepts, it might be mobile learning, quote, and quote, foreign language learning, quote, you see? But all the rest, I think not that difficult. Another punctuation mark which we haven't spoken about is a slash. You see, country, regions, either or, okay? That's that. And now the final task. Could you please go to tracing the changes activity? This is the last one for the workshop. And it leads you to the very first activity which you did at the very beginning. And I'm quite curious whether you will have some changes or not. Let us have a look at what I have done with that. Okay, maybe you will have some questions. Okay, just have a look. Let me just highlight a few things here. Russians, for some reasons, do not like to put comma after introductory sentences, though we have a rule in Russian. And that's why, to make it clear where the subject is, my recommendation is in the introductory sentences, write a comma, like in the Russian language, comma, right? For example, comma. One more thing, if we have something which is written in a different language, by the way, we have the same rule here, like что here, a Russian word in the English text. We usually use it in italics. This is another meaning of italics, okay? And we put the explanation using quote marks, and not to disrupt the flow, we can put it in parentheses because we can use it as additional information, but it's not that necessary, okay? One more thing about italics, it's another meaning, you see, you attract the reader's attention. That's why who and which are given in italics here. All right, dash, some people just really like dashes, okay? This is important information, okay? And I would like to highlight what I mean by here in oral speech, okay? That's why I put an M dash here, M dash, okay? Which is long, right? Pauses, variation of tones, okay? Have a look at this one. Here, not enough, not can be given either in bold, it's also a kind of mark, or it can be given in capital letters, all uh, all the letters, or it can be given in italics, and this is up to you. This is your style, okay? Again, a reminder: do not use punctuation, do not use exclamation marks very, very often. You may wonder why we have a colon here, though at school we were taught that we use a comma, unlike Russian, before somebody's speech, before a quote. But have a look here, we do not have a verb, we have the saying, a noun. When a noun introduces a quote, then we use a colon. But there are lots of other examples and lots of other marks we're not going to cover here. And I'm finishing. And I would like to quote a former Archbishop of York. If you are getting your commas, semicolons, and full stops wrong, he was British, right? It means that you are not getting your thoughts right, and your mind is muddled. Coming back to the importance of punctuation, and the strategies are, now I think that you were able to analyze which punctuation mark presents the most challenge to you personally, okay? Then there is a list of resources where you can learn the rules. Please use them. Do not forget to check the style. In my recommendation, whenever you proofread your text before coming to consultation, and that's why I ask the consultants to invite you to read the text aloud, because it shows where the pauses should be, okay? Read your text aloud and watch where you make pauses yourself. Maybe there should be a mark should be, okay? And of course, to struggle with the ambiguity, you have to ask yourself questions. And again, just ambiguous sign, which I loved: if you had a good time, tell a friend. If you didn't, tell us. That's what I talked about, an American poet, E. Cummings, okay? And that's the person, Patrick Stewart. Dissertation, no punctuation marks at all. Let us say goodbye to each other. We will be happy to see you at other workshops.